The types of narrative text can be divided into several categories, including: based on length, narrative text can be divided into: folktales are stories that are passed down from generation to generation orally or in writing. Folktales usually have magical or supernatural elements, and often contain moral messages. Fairy tales are stories that have magical or supernatural elements, and usually have a happy ending. Fables are stories about animals that can talk and think like humans. Fables usually contain moral messages. Legend is a story that is considered to have really happened by the local community. Legends usually tell about historical figures or events that are considered to have power or privileges. Myths are stories that are considered to have really happened by the local community, but have no historical evidence. Myths are usually about gods and goddesses, supernatural beings, or natural events that are considered to have power or privileges. Based on genre, narrative text can be divided into: adventure stories are stories that tell about the adventures of characters in facing various challenges. A mystery story is a story that tells about a mystery or puzzle that must be solved by the character. A horror story is a story that tells about horrible and frightening events. Humorous stories are stories that tell funny and ridiculous events. A romance story is a story that tells a love story between two characters. Based on the theme, narrative text can be divided into: moral stories are stories that contain moral messages. Educational stories are stories that aim to educate readers. Entertainment stories are stories that aim to entertain readers. Based on its setting, narrative text can be divided into: historical stories are stories set in a historical background. A fantasy story is a story set in a fantasy world. A science fiction story is a story set in a science fiction world. Based on the point of view, narrative text can be divided into: a first-person story is a story told from the point of view of the main character. A second-person story is a story told from the reader's point of view. A third-person story is a story told from the point of view of another person. A short story is a narrative prose literary work that is shorter than a novel and usually tells the story of only a few characters. Short stories usually only tell short stories about the problems experienced by one character. According to KBBI, a short story is defined as a short story, less than 10,000 words, that gives a dominant single impression and focuses on one character in one situation, at a time. The elements of a short story consist of: theme is the main idea underlying the story. Characters are the actors involved in the story. Characterization is the way the author describes the characters. Setting is the time and place where the story takes place. The plot is the series of events in the story. Point of view is the way the author tells the story. Language style is the way the author uses language in the story. The characteristics of short stories include: limited in length, usually less than 10,000 words. Fictional, meaning not real. Centers on one character and one event. Has a clear conflict and resolution. Ends with a climax that creates a single, dominant impression.
Example of narrative text dalam kurung legend title Hufra at the edge of the western desert, a ancient city hides among the sands. Though time has passed, the desert should engulf the majestic city standing proudly in the midst of this emptiness. Ancient scholars have long spoken of this mythical city, ruled most famously by none other than Hufra. Hufra, a ruthless and insatiable ruler, colder than ice and greedy beyond limits. To satisfy his personal desire for dominance, he led the powerful Arnak forces to attack the city and conquer the western desert. Tirelessly, Hufra expanded his realm of power and wealth unmatched. Unfortunately, the Minoan Empire proved to be a foe too formidable to conquer. Nevertheless, Hufra hungered for more power. He sought the most renowned seer in the land of Dawn to aid himself. Disappointingly, the seer discovered Hufra's dangerous intentions, rejected him, and was swiftly killed. Only the young Eslora found Hufra intriguing and eventually became his lover. Hufra's emotionless demeanor led Eslora into the chaos of internal conflict and love. Over time, Eslora grew to love Hufra deeply and began assisting him in his role. As time passed, Aslora used her magical abilities to grant Hufra unprecedented magical power. However, Hufra became even more ruthless and power-hungry. His conquest extended beyond the western desert. He sought to conquer the entire land of Doon. Witnessing the cruelty of his love, Aslora decided to save Hufra from society's hatred. Nevertheless, Hufra continued to use magic to enhance his strength. He asked Aslora to give him all the enchantments. He had to completely wipe out the Minoan Empire. No one could question his power. One night, Aslora approached Hufra and tightly embraced her lover. She began casting a powerful curse on Hufra while he expected the highest power granted by Aslora. Suddenly, Hufra felt oppressed by a tremendous force. He turned and stared at Aslora. No matter how hard Hufra tried to break free, Aslora relentlessly chanted her curse. Hufra couldn't believe his lover was punishing him. Aslora cheered as she bound her love into eternal sleep. She chose to personally sell her lover in the ancient city and build a magnificent monument. Aslora believed it was better to end Hufra before he became a hated tyrant, recorded in history as a cruel king who only loved power. Since then, the war smoke in the western desert disappeared. However, hundreds of years later, a momentous event occurred in the western desert. Energy waves from Aspera awakened Hufra from his hatred and anger-filled slumber. He returned to the world. Hufra could accept the betrayal of his past lover. His abilities and desires were stronger than ever. He swore to find Aslora and continue the age-old desire to dominate the land of Doon in his hands.